Okay, so this is a maximum utility problem, and this is something that we deal with in microeconomics in terms of understanding how we allocate our budget, and always to remember that our budgets are scarce. So what does that mean? That means there's a certain scarcity whenever we deal with whenever we have money to spend, whenever we have any kind of limited budget, because there's just no matter how much capital you have, even the largest companies have to make choices because there are unlimited. I mean, look at, for instance, the United States government has an annual GDP of over $20 trillion, and they still have objectives and plans that they can't affect without increasing their budget. They still borrow money in effect. So there's the scarcity issue in economics. And on a more micro level, we look at it in terms of utility. So when we look at a utility table, and this is just a mathematical way of describing how we allocate our budget. In this case, we have actually four different, or five different goods. So good A, good B, good C, good D, and savings. That's money that we're not going to spend. So if you went to the mall and you had money to spend, could be like say five choices, maybe pants and a shirt or a pair of shoes, and maybe you want to go home with some capital. So what we see is this is a person's preference. So quantity would be the number of items we would buy for each good. And the cost of each good is on top. So good A would be $4, good B would be $7, good C, 5, good D, 3. And savings is savings, so it's $1. Each unit is worth $1 to us. So, right, $1 is worth $1. And what we see on the marginal utility is our additional benefit for buying each unit of product. So for instance, on good A, if we are spending $4 on the first unit, so say the first shirt we buy, we may get 16 marginal utilities. This is a way of us measuring how valuable that is for us, how valuable the first shirt is. The second shirt might give us a little more happiness because we have more shirts in our closet. And notice as we move up, our marginal utility keeps moving up, and then it drops off at one point. And this is same thing in point B. As you watch this utility go down, this is the law of diminishing marginal returns, which means that as we get more and more of something, as we buy more and more of something, oranges, apples, cars, houses, we get less and less fulfillment out of it because it's not scarce to us. So think about you, but a lot of this is human nature. How as we purchase additional units of a product, our marginal utility may go up, but then it starts to drop off. So we get a little more happiness with each purchase, but notice that at one point our the next amount, marginality being the next amount of utility drops off. And even in how much money we save. In the beginning, we're very happy to save, but after a while, we don't get that same feeling about saving. So that in a nutshell is what we're looking at. So when you walk into a mall, you may not think about what's my utility for a second pair of pants or what's my utility for another pair of sneakers. But effectively, you're thinking that way. Do I really need a second pair if it's buy one, get one? Try to think of it that way, the psychology of wanting things. You know, wants versus needs, right? That's another thing we talk about all the time. So in product A, we have quantity 1, which is 16. And if I'm paying $4 for that, I'm going to get 4 additional units of utility per dollar that I spend, because you have to go by dollars, right? If going back to the last, if going back to our last panel, if go back to our last panel, if so if I'm only spending $4 to get 16, it's bang for the buck, right? I'm getting 16 utilities for $4. Effectively, I'm getting 4 per dollar. Where here I might be getting more, but I'm spending more money on this product. Again, when you go to the store, you may get more happiness out of something more expensive, but for instance, you buy a steak dinner that's $40, you're going to get a certain amount of happiness and utility out of that. But you may go and get a nice burger and some fries for $8, and you get more value for the dollar. And isn't that the way we always think? We want to try to get the most value for our dollar. So sometimes many times we make choices that way. We choose things based on how much we're going to get for the money we're spending. And that's as a way of us quantifying it. So we have 16 utilities here versus $4. So we're going to get for each dollar we spend, we're going to get 4 utilities or 4 amounts of happiness. And we can keep doing the math, and you see it starts to raise. On product C, where it's more expensive, you can notice per dollar it goes down. So that's what you have to do. You have to divide the utilities by the dollar cost of each. And so when I do that, I'm going to get this marginal utility table, all right, marginal utility function. And it's going to show me that in the case of good A, the first unit gave me 4 per dollar. And then notice the additional happiness per dollar starts to go up and then drops off per dollar. And even though B has more total utility because it costs me more, I get less per dollar. And that's the way we think as humans. How much happiness am I getting per dollar? I mean, yeah, it's great to own a $200,000. I'm not a car guy, but it's great to own a $200,000 car. I'm sure that gives you a lot of happiness. But per dollar, a $50,000 or $40,000 car may give you much more happiness per dollar because you're going to get, because the additional $160,000 you're spending from 40 to 200 may not give you that much, $160,000 more of happiness, because there's only so much happiness a product could give you or anything can give you. So we notice that when we divide our utilities, 12 divided by 5, 60 divided by 5, 25 divided by 5, we get this marginal utility per dollar. And the same thing for cash. And we know we're dealing with the budget, right? So in the next unit, we have to find a place in the utility table where our numbers are equal. And notice we equal at 4 and 5. And why is that? Because we always, at the end of the day, we want to have an equal amount of happiness with everything we choose. Because think about it theoretically again, and this can get a little tricky to think about. But if something gave me more happiness than another thing, if shoes gave me more happiness than pants, I would just keep buying more shoes. But in this case, I would stop purchasing when I get to a level where I'm equally satisfied with everything. And that's how you have to think about this problem. I'm equally satisfied with these numbers. Because think about when you leave a store. I'm equally satisfied with all my choices, and I'm going to stop there. So I look at the ones that are equal on a marginal utility per dollar basis, and I notice these red lines give me one set of choices, and the green lines give me another set of choices. So if I make either one of those basket of purchases, I'm going to be equally happy. But then again, I want to use my entire budget. And so I have to multiply 4 times 4, 1 times 7, 3 times 5. And then in this case, I wouldn't buy any of these because there are no 4s here. I'm not getting enough happiness from this product, so I'm just not even going to buy it. That might be something like earrings for a woman or gloves for a man. I'm not getting any happiness. I'm not going to buy that. And I multiply it, and that's how I solve this problem mathematically. So if I could use either 5s or 4s, and if I use 5s and I use the circles, not purchasing anything in D, I'm going to have $43. I'm going to have to spend $43 to make all the 5s equal, to have equal happiness at 5. I don't have enough money for that. But if I go with 4, notice what happens. I exactly use my budget. And I wind up, if I buy 1 of A, 2 of B, 4 of C, none of D, and put $3 away, I would have used my budget. Just like when you leave the mall and say, or you leave the shopping center and you say, you know what, I got just enough happiness out of the things I bought. I'm equally happy with everything I bought. I've exhausted my budget, and I had a little money left over, and I'll put it in my pocket. And that's how you solve this problem. Now, if my budget was $43, I would have chosen this group. But since my budget was only $41, I chose this group. And, you know, basically that's how you do this problem. I'm going to go backwards for a minute. But that's how you do this problem. Now, where do these numbers come up, marginal utility? Well, obviously, we provide that as an example so you can understand the concept. Once again, the math is not nearly as important as the concept. The concept that we have a utility for things. That there are things, and you hear this all the time about wants and needs. That there are things we want, and then there are things we need. And each kind of choice gives us what we call utility, which is our need for these things. Now, if I was talking about a life-saving drug that I needed, I would obviously have a very high marginal utility for that. And if I'm talking about a luxury item, maybe not so much because I could live without it. Anything that's substitutable, I can live without. But things that are not substitutable are going to give me very high utility. And then it becomes a question of how much money do I want to spend for that happiness. I love eating lobster, but you know, that could get costly and probably not the healthiest thing to eat every day. I love eating steak, but that could be very costly and not the best thing to eat every day. So we balance that by buying things that are less expensive. And probably the secret behind things like the popularity of pizza or hamburger or certain kinds of foods like that. What makes those foods so popular? They deliver a lot of utility at a very reasonable cost. Think about it in the case of pizza. It delivers a lot of utility and nutrition and taste at a very reasonable cost. So you learn another lesson here that if you can deliver utility to people at the right cost, you could do very well. I mean, look at the iPhone. It sounds like a lot of money, $1,000, but for $1,000 a phone, roughly speaking, you're getting a lot of utility. And that makes it a very good purchase, and that's why it's so popular. Think about all the things that are popular. They give people utility at a reasonable cost. So hopefully that gives you an idea on marginal utility. That's how you solve it mathematically. For those of you who are in my class, you could find this under the modules. Thank you for listening.